The FileStreamOptions class has a number of properties that you can set. The first of these is the mode property. The mode property specifies how you want to open or create the file. The mode property specifies one of the file mode enumeration values, and it defaults to filemode.open. And as we saw in the previous demo, we can set this to create new to create a new file, which will throw an exception if the file already exists. We can set this to create, which will overwrite an existing file. We can set this to open an existing file, and if the file doesn't exist, throw an exception. We can use open or create to open a file if it already exists, otherwise create a new file. We can use truncate to open the file and set its size to 0 bytes. When we use truncate, we'll get an exception if the specified file doesn't exist. And finally, we have filemode.append, which will open an existing file and then seek to the end to append data to the end of the file. If the file doesn't exist, it will be created. We also have the share property on the FileStreamOptions class. This property allows you to specify how the file will be shared by multiple processes when they try to open the same file concurrently. This is of type FileShare, which is an enum. This is a combinable enum, meaning that you can combine multiple options, and it defaults to FileShare.read. The Microsoft documentation states that FileShare.read allows subsequent opening of the file for reading. If this flag is not specified, any request to open the file for reading by this process or another process will fail until the file is closed. If you want to read more about the different options available for the share property, check out the documentation at this link here. Next up, we have the options property. This allows you to specify advanced and additional file options if you need them. The options property is an enum, the file options enum, and once again you can combine multiple values from this enum, and it defaults to fileoptions.none, which essentially states that there's no additional file options set. As a couple of examples of these file options, you can set this to random access, and the Microsoft documentation states that random access indicates that a file is accessed randomly. The system can use this as a hint to optimize file caching. And as another example, you could set this to asynchronous, which Microsoft describe as a file can be used for asynchronous reading and writing. Once again, if you want to go in depth on these options, check out the documentation at this link here. We also have the pre-allocation size property of the FileStreamOptions class. This allows you to set a value to request that the operating system pre-allocates a specified amount of space on disk before creating a file. This property is of type long, which allows you to specify the pre-allocation size in bytes, and this property defaults to 0. One thing to be aware of is that this is just a hint to the operating system, and as Microsoft state, is not a strong guarantee. You may want to use this, for example, when creating large files. When the file size is known in advance, you can set the pre-allocation size to be the same size as the file length, and this may result in reduced disk fragmentation, and it also may improve performance. Finally, we have the buffer size property. This allows you to specify the size of the buffer that .NET uses for reading and writing data to the operating system and disk. This setting allows .NET to optimize performance, because by using a buffer, .NET can reduce the number of expensive operating system read and write calls. This property is of type int, and it defaults to 4096 bytes. If for some reason you want to disable this buffering in .NET, you can set this value to 1. Let's head back to Visual Studio now, and we'll see how we can simplify the creation of stream readers and stream writers.